They laughed when she stood up. Not the loud, cruel kind of laughter, no, this was subtler, wrapped in linen napkins and softened by wine. The kind that passed for charm in rooms where people believed embarrassment was harmless if it wore a smile. The restaurant was famous for its restraint. Soft lighting, muted conversations, plates placed with ceremony. The kind of place where the menu came without prices and confidence was assumed. And in the center of it all stood the chef, white coat immaculate, reputation legendary, ego carefully fed by years of applause. He had been holding court at the open kitchen when he noticed her. She sat alone at a small table near the back. No jewelry worth noting. No phone angled for photos. She studied the menu like someone reading a foreign language, not confused, just attentive. Curious. Out of sync with the rhythm of the room. The chef leaned toward the sommelier and smirked. "She doesn't belong here," he murmured, not bothering to lower his voice enough. The sommelier glanced over, shrugged. "Tourist, maybe." The chef's eyes lingered on her a moment longer. Something about her calm irritated him. Guests like her usually tried harder, asked more questions, apologized for their presence. She did neither. She simply closed the menu and waited. When the server approached, the chef intercepted him. "No," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Let's make this interesting." He stepped out from behind the counter, hands clasped behind his back, playing to the room like a seasoned performer. A few diners looked up, sensing entertainment. "You seem unsure," he said to the woman, smiling thinly. "Would you like a recommendation?" She looked up, meeting his eyes without hesitation. "I'd like what you think represents this kitchen best." A pause. The chef chuckled. "That's a dangerous request." Then, with a glance around the room, he added, "Tell you what, why don't you come back here and cook something yourself?" A ripple of amusement spread. Forks paused midair. Someone snorted softly into a napkin. The woman blinked once. "You're joking." "Of course," he said, though his smile sharpened. "Unless you'd like to try." The room leaned in. This was no longer dinner, it was spectacle. Slowly, deliberately, she pushed her chair back and stood. "I'll need a pan," she said quietly. "And 10 minutes." The laughter faltered, not gone, but uncertain now. The chef raised an eyebrow, amused. "By all means." As she stepped into the kitchen, tying on an apron that was far too large for her, the first hint of doubt flickered across his face, not because he believed she could cook, but because for the first time that evening, she wasn't the one performing. The kitchen fell quiet in a way it never did. Burners hissed softly, knives rested mid-chop, and even the exhaust seemed to lower its breath. The staff watched her with thinly veiled curiosity, some with smirks they hadn't yet decided to put away. She moved without asking questions, scanning the stations the way someone might scan a map they already knew. "What do you plan to make?" one of the sous chefs asked, half challenging, half amused. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for a pan of cast iron, seasoned dark with years of use. She lifted it, weighed it in her hands, then set it on the flame. The sound it made when it touched the burner was confident. Familiar. The chef leaned against the counter, arms crossed, enjoying the moment. "Clock's ticking," he said lightly. She nodded once. "Oil." "Not too much. Just enough to shimmer." She moved through the kitchen with an economy that felt practiced. No wasted steps. No hesitation. She selected ingredients without browsing: shallots, a bundle of herbs tied with twine, a cut of fish no one ordered unless they knew exactly what they were doing. A few cooks exchanged glances. "That's not on the menu," someone whispered. She smiled faintly, but said nothing. Out in the dining room, the mood had shifted. Conversations softened. Heads tilted toward the open kitchen. Phones were quietly lowered. This wasn't the kind of moment that needed proof, it needed watching. The chef's amusement dimmed just a fraction. The pan was hot now. She added the fish skin side down, and the sound it made, sharp, immediate, cut through the room. Perfect contact. No splash. No panic. She pressed gently, just for a moment, then stepped back. Time passed differently after that. She worked without flourish. No dramatic tossing. No showmanship. Just precision. Shallots in at the right second. A splash of wine, measured by instinct. The scent that rose from the pan was subtle at first, then unmistakable. People began to notice. A diner near the counter inhaled and frowned, confused. That smells incredible. The chef straightened. She basted the fish with butter, spooning it over in steady motions, the herbs perfuming the air. Her face remained calm, almost distant, as if she were somewhere else entirely. 5 minutes, the chef said, more to himself than to her. She nodded again. When she reached for salt, she didn't pinch it blindly. She tasted. Adjusted. Tasted again. The sous chef swallowed. "Who is she?" he murmured. No one answered. She plated the dish simply, no towers, no unnecessary decoration. Just balance. Color. Intention. Then she turned, holding the plate out toward the chef. "Now," she said quietly, "you may taste it." The room held its breath. The chef hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but in a kitchen trained to notice timing, it was everything. He masked it quickly, reaching for a fork with practiced confidence, yet his eyes lingered on the plate longer than necessary. The fish glistened softly, steam rising in thin, fragrant ribbons. Nothing screamed for attention. Nothing begged to be admired. That, somehow, unsettled him most. He took a bite. At first, his expression didn't change. Years of discipline kept his face neutral, unreadable. But then his brow tightened, almost imperceptibly. He took another bite, slower this time, chewing as if the answer might reveal itself if he waited long enough. Around him, no one moved. The sous chef leaned forward without realizing it. A server near the pass froze mid-step. In the dining room, forks hovered, forgotten. The chef set the fork down. "That's," he began, then stopped. He looked up at her, not with amusement now, not with superiority, but with something closer to caution. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. She wiped her hands on the apron, calm as ever. "From someone who didn't believe recipes were enough," she replied. He studied her face, searching for ego, for triumph. There was none. Only focus. Restraint. He took another bite. This time, he closed his eyes. A murmur rippled through the kitchen. That alone was unheard of. The chef never closed his eyes while tasting, not here, not ever. When he opened them again, something fundamental had shifted. "This shouldn't work," he said quietly. "But it does." She tilted her head slightly. "It works because it listens," she said. "Not everything needs to shout." The chef laughed once, short, disbelieving, but there was no humor in it. "You broke 3 of my rules," he said. She met his gaze. "You wrote them to protect consistency, not excellence." Silence followed. Out in the dining room, someone clapped softly before realizing no one else had joined in. The sound died quickly, swallowed by anticipation. The chef straightened and looked around the kitchen. "Clear a table," he said abruptly. Center of the room. A ripple of shock passed through the staff. "For her," someone whispered. "For the dish," he corrected, then paused. "And for the woman who made it." She looked at him then, really looked at him. "I didn't come here to perform," she said gently. "I know," he replied. "That's why this matters." He turned toward the dining room, lifting the plate himself. Conversation stopped entirely now. Every eye followed him as he placed the dish down beneath the lights, as if presenting evidence rather than food. She cooked this, he announced, gesturing toward her. A wave of disbelief swept the room. The chef glanced back at her, his voice lower now. You should tell them who you are. She didn't move. Not yet, she said. And somewhere between the hum of the burners and the held breath of the guests, the restaurant began to realize that dinner was no longer the main event, and that whatever came next would change far more than the menu. The chef didn't argue. That alone sent a tremor through the room. He set the plate down carefully, as though it might say something if handled carelessly enough. A server approached instinctively, then stopped, unsure whether this dish was meant to be eaten or witnessed. The woman remained by the pass, hands folded, the oversized apron still tied at her waist. She looked smaller there somehow, less because she lacked presence, more because the space around her had grown suddenly reverent. A man at the nearest table leaned forward. Is this part of the tasting menu? He asked, half joking, half hopeful. The chef shook his head. No, he said. This is something else. He turned back to her. You didn't ask for permission, he said quietly. She met his eyes. You didn't ask who I was. A few guests exchanged looks. Someone laughed nervously. Another reached for their glass and missed it slightly. The chef exhaled through his nose. Fair. He gestured toward the ingredients she had used, still laid out neatly on the station. You chose restraint, he said. Most people try to impress. She shrugged lightly. I was cooking for the food, she replied. Not the room. That landed harder than any insult. The sous chef cleared his throat. Chef, he said cautiously, people are asking if they can order it. The chef hesitated again, longer this time. No, he said finally. Not yet. He looked at her. You didn't cook this to be repeated. She gave a small nod. Some dishes are conversations, she said. Not products. The dining room buzzed now, low and electric. Phones were out again, but this time no one was filming the kitchen. They were filming reactions, faces, whispers, the chef himself standing slightly off balance for the first time anyone could remember. A woman near the window stood. Excuse me, she said, addressing the chef but looking at the cook. If you don't mind me asking, why agree to this? The simple woman considered the question. Because, she said slowly, people often confuse simplicity with ignorance. I wanted to see how far that assumption went. The chef gave a short, humorless smile. Further than I'd like to admit. A pause followed. Then he did something no one expected. He untied his apron and set it on the counter. Gasps rippled through the room. I've spent years perfecting control, he said, his voice carrying now. Tonight reminded me why I started cooking in the first place. He turned to her. You didn't humiliate me, he said. You challenged me. She shook her head. I cooked, she replied. What you felt was your own reflection. The room fell silent again, not tense this time, but attentive. Something fragile was unfolding, something that didn't belong to spectacle or ego. From the back of the restaurant, a manager approached hurriedly, whispering something into the chef's ear. The chef's expression changed, surprise, then curiosity, then something like disbelief. He looked at her again, studying her with new eyes. You should know, he said quietly, that someone just asked if we could close the kitchen for the night. She raised an eyebrow. Why? Because, he replied, whatever this is, it's no longer about dinner. She glanced around the room once more, at the guests, the staff, the dish cooling gently under the lights, then reached up and began untying the apron, slow and deliberate. Then, she said, perhaps it's time to decide what it is about. And the restaurant waited. No one rushed her. That was the strange part. In a room once governed by timing, courses, reservations, turns of the table, everything now moved at her pace. The apron slipped from her hands and rested on the counter like a finished sentence. The chef watched her closely. Not as a superior. Not as a rival. As a student might watch a master without yet knowing it. The manager hesitated at his side. The investors are asking questions, he whispered. Press 2. Someone posted already. The chef didn't look away from her. Tell them to wait. The manager blinked. Waiting was not something this place ever asked of anyone important. The woman stepped out from behind the pass and into the dining room. The shift was immediate, chairs subtly adjusted, spines straightened, conversations dissolved mid-word. She didn't command attention, she absorbed it. She stopped beside the table closest to the kitchen. The diners there looked up at her as though she had interrupted something sacred. May I? She asked, gesturing to the untouched plate. They nodded quickly. She picked up a fork and tasted the dish herself for the first time. A small pause followed, not evaluation, but memory. Something passed through her expression, brief and private, before it settled again into calm. It cooled slightly, she said. That's all. The chef let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. A man near the center of the room finally spoke. You cook like someone who doesn't need approval. A faint smile appeared. Approval, she replied, is expensive. I learned early to stop buying it. Another guest stood. Then another. Not applause, something quieter. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. The chef took a step forward. If you walked into my kitchen any other day, he said, I would have dismissed you. I know, she answered easily. And yet, he continued, you reminded everyone here why technique exists in the first place. She met his gaze. To serve something honest. A hush settled again, deeper now. The restaurant no longer felt like a business or a stage. It felt like a threshold. From the corner, a voice broke through, measured, curious. If you don't mind me asking, said a woman in a tailored jacket, what do you do? The simple woman considered the question, eyes drifting briefly to the open kitchen, the waiting staff, the chef who had once laughed. I listen, she said. I observe. And when necessary, I cook. The answer was unsatisfying. Intriguing. Dangerous. The chef glanced at the clock. Service should have ended minutes ago. No one had noticed. Stay, he said suddenly. Not a command. An invitation. Not to cook. To talk. She looked around the room once more, then back at him. For a little while, she said. But understand this, what you felt tonight won't come from repeating the dish. He nodded slowly. I suspected as much. Somewhere near the door, another phone vibrated. A reservation was cancelled. Another was added. Word was spreading, reshaping expectations in real time. The woman took a seat at an empty table, folding her hands, unhurried. Conversations didn't resume, not fully. They orbited her now, careful, curious. And as the chef returned to the kitchen, aprons still resting untouched on the counter, he realized the restaurant had crossed into unfamiliar territory. One where the most important ingredient had never been on the menu. The kitchen lights hummed softly, a familiar sound that now felt altered, as if even the electricity sensed the shift. The chef stood still for a moment before turning back to his staff. No orders were called. No tickets printed. The line, once a machine of precision, waited, hands idle, eyes flicking between him and the woman seated in the dining room. Hold, he said quietly. No one questioned it. Out front, the woman sat with composed ease, her posture relaxed but attentive, as though she were listening to something beneath the noise, an undercurrent others had only just begun to notice. A glass of water appeared at her table without her asking. She nodded in thanks, but didn't drink. The woman in the tailored jacket approached cautiously. People are saying you could walk into any kitchen in the world, she said, lowering her voice. Is that true? The simple woman smiled faintly. Most kitchens don't need me, she replied. They need reminding. That answer traveled faster than it should have. Nearby, a pair of diners debated in whispers whether what they'd witnessed was genius or provocation. A critic, well known, suddenly unsure, typed a message and erased it 3 times before saving nothing at all. This wasn't a moment that fit neatly into praise or critique. The chef emerged again, resting his hands on the back of an empty chair across from her. You didn't just cook, he said. You disrupted the hierarchy. She tilted her head slightly. Hierarchies collapse when they forget their purpose. He let out a quiet laugh. You make it sound inevitable. It usually is, she said. A server approached hesitantly. Chef, there are guests asking if tonight will be remembered as a special event. The chef glanced at the woman before answering. It already is, he said. She met his eyes, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that this night would ripple outward, into kitchens and dining rooms far beyond these walls. People will want to name this, the chef added. Label it. Claim it. She nodded. They always do. And you, he asked. I'll let them, she said. Names are for people who need to hold on. From the street outside, headlights flashed briefly through the windows. Someone important had arrived. Or perhaps someone who thought they were. The woman glanced toward the door, then back to the chef. You may want to decide, she said gently, who you want to be when this becomes a story. The chef straightened, a new resolve settling into his expression. And you, he asked. She rose slowly from her chair, the room quieting instinctively once more. I'll be what I've always been, she replied. A reminder. The doors at the entrance opened, letting in a rush of cool air and voices, curious, expectant, unaware of the delicate balance inside. And as the first step crossed the threshold, the restaurant stood poised between what it had been and what it was about to become. The rush of cool air lingered longer than expected, curling through the dining room like a question no one was ready to answer. A small group entered, well-dressed, confident, already scanning the room for cues on how to behave. They slowed almost immediately. Something was off. No clatter of plates. No rhythmic calls from the kitchen. No performative welcome. Just stillness, dense and watchful. One of them laughed uncertainly. Did we miss something? No one replied. The chef watched from near the pass, reading the room the way he used to read flames, carefully, respectfully. He didn't move to greet the newcomers. He didn't need to. The restaurant itself was doing the work now. The woman stood near her table, neither advancing nor retreating. She observed the arrivals with the same quiet attention she had given the ingredients earlier, as if people, too, revealed their nature when given just enough time. A man from the new group leaned toward a server. Is service delayed? The server hesitated, then said truthfully, service is paused. That word spread. Paused meant intentional. Controlled. It meant something was being decided. The woman in the tailored jacket returned to the woman's side. You realize, she said softly, people will speculate. They'll invent histories for you. The simple woman nodded. They already are. And you're comfortable with that? I'm comfortable with being misunderstood, she replied. It's often the cost of seeing clearly. Across the room, the critic finally put the phone away. He had realized that whatever he wrote tonight would age badly. Some moments resisted capture. This was one of them. The chef approached again, slower now, as if each step carried weight. My staff is waiting, he said. They don't know whether to reset the line or dismantle it. She looked toward the kitchen, where cooks stood quietly, hands clean, eyes bright with something dangerously close to hope. Ask them why they started, she said. He turned and did exactly that. The answers came unevenly. A grandmother. A street stall. Hunger. Pride. Survival. Love. The woman listened from where she stood, hearing not just the words, but the spaces between them, the compromises, the quiet griefs, the forgotten ambitions. That, she said when he returned, is what tonight touched. The chef nodded, jaw tight. Then staying open as if nothing happened would be dishonest. Yes, she agreed. And closing forever would be cowardly. The weight of that settled over him. Outside, more phones buzzed. A car door shut. Someone important was definitely waiting now. The woman adjusted her sleeves, a small, grounding gesture. You don't need me for what comes next, she said. You just needed interruption. And if I ask you to stay anyway, the chef said. She met his eyes, thoughtful. Then you'd be asking the wrong question. The lights above the open kitchen flickered slightly as someone adjusted the dimmer, brighter now, revealing more than before. The staff straightened. The guests leaned in. The restaurant was no longer paused. It was deciding. The decision did not announce itself all at once. It crept in through posture first, backs straightening, shoulders settling, the quiet resolve that replaced confusion. The staff moved again, not because they were told to, but because stillness had given them something new to move toward. The chef stepped into the kitchen and spoke softly, yet every word carried. We don't reset, he said. We don't dismantle. We cook, just not the way we did an hour ago. A murmur followed. Not dissent. Relief. He turned a burner back on. The flame caught instantly. In the dining room, the woman remained where she was, watching the shift ripple outward. The newcomers stood uncertainly near the entrance now, sensing they had arrived late to something important but unable to name what it was. One of them instinctively lowered his voice. Another slid their phone back into a pocket. The woman in the tailored jacket leaned closer. You changed the temperature of the room, she said quietly. People will chase that feeling. They always do, the simple woman replied. Few understand it can't be recreated on demand. A server approached her table again. May I bring you something, he asked, not rehearsed, not polished, just genuine. She thought for a moment. Bread, she said. Whatever's left. He smiled, surprised, and hurried off. The chef returned to the pass, eyes scanning the room with new awareness. They're asking if tonight has a name, he said. She glanced up. Does it need one? He shook his head slowly. No. But they'll give it one anyway. The bread arrived, still warm, crust uneven, torn rather than sliced. She broke off a piece, inhaled, and nodded faintly. Somewhere in the kitchen, someone exhaled without realizing they'd been holding their breath. Outside, a voice rose, it's impatient now. A figure paced just beyond the glass, gesturing, clearly accustomed to being let in immediately. The woman noticed but didn't turn. Whatever happens next, the chef said, lowering his voice, won't stay contained. She met his gaze, calm and certain. Important things never do. The doors at the front shifted as a hand reached for the handle again, more insistently this time. Inside, the staff moved with purpose. Guests leaned forward. The air felt charged, not tense, but alive. The simple woman tore another piece of bread, listening to the room, to the kitchen, to the moment as it stretched, fragile, promising, unfinished, waiting to see who would step through next and what they would demand of a place that had already changed. The handle turned, but the door didn't open. Not because it was locked, but because the host had quietly placed his hand against it from the inside. He hadn't been told to. He simply understood, in a way he hadn't before, that entrances mattered. Outside, the figure paused, confused. Inside, the room exhaled together. The woman noticed the host's hand, the subtle tension in his wrist, and gave the smallest nod. Not approval, acknowledgement. He straightened, letting the door rest closed without confrontation. The chef watched this exchange and felt something settle into place. Authority, he realized, didn't always announce itself with raised voices or formal titles. Sometimes it moved through rooms silently, changing behavior without ever asking permission. The bread was nearly gone now. The woman brushed the crumbs from her fingers and folded the napkin once, precisely. A small act, but deliberate. People think disruption is loud, she said, not addressing anyone in particular. It isn't. It's subtle. It's when the familiar no longer feels sufficient. A guest near the center table nodded slowly, as if realizing he'd been nodding for minutes already. From the kitchen came new sounds, not the frantic pace of service, but a measured rhythm. Knives resumed their work. Pans warmed. Someone laughed softly, surprised by their own ease. The chef leaned closer to the woman's table. "If you disappear after tonight," he said, "they'll call this myth." She smiled faintly. "Then it will survive longer." Another vibration stirred in her pocket. She ignored it again, eyes lifting instead to the ceiling, to the lights that now felt less theatrical and more honest. The woman in the tailored jacket spoke carefully. "You never answered what you were before you came here." The simple woman looked at her, thoughtful. "I was paying attention," she said. "Most people don't start until it's too late." Outside, the figure at the door stepped back, phone pressed to their ear now, voice sharp with frustration. Inside, the host released his hand and moved away, confident the door would remain closed without him. The chef straightened, adjusting his jacket, not out of habit but intention. "We're ready," he said, to the staff, to the room, to himself. The woman rose once more, slow and unhurried. Chairs shifted. Conversations stilled. She glanced toward the kitchen, then the door, then the people gathered between them, each waiting for a signal, a permission, a next step. Instead, she said quietly, "Begin." And the restaurant leaned forward into whatever that word was about to mean. The chef nodded once. And service resumed. Not as it had been, but as it should have been all along. Plates left the kitchen slower, more intentional. Servers spoke less, listened more. Guests stopped checking their phones and started tasting, really tasting. The room filled not with noise, but with presence. With attention. With something that couldn't be rehearsed. The woman did not stay to see the end. While the restaurant found its new rhythm, she slipped her coat back on, plain as ever, and walked toward the side exit. No announcement followed her. No one tried to stop her. A few noticed. Fewer understood. At the door, the chef looked up just in time to catch her eye. "Thank you," he said, not loudly, not publicly, but honestly. She inclined her head. "You already knew," she replied. "You just remembered." Then she was gone. Outside, the city moved as it always had, the cars, lights, impatience, hunger. No one stopped her. No one recognized her. And she preferred it that way. Inside, the restaurant would be written about for years. Critics would struggle to explain what had happened. Diners would return chasing a feeling they couldn't name. The chef would never joke at a guest's expense again. And somewhere, in another room, on another night, someone would underestimate a quiet woman. Never realizing that sometimes the most extraordinary things arrive without warning. And leave just as silently, after changing everything.